remember.
Yeah. No, yesterday
No,
he's supposed to go for a vaccination, but before that I told him if you are not feeling well, don't take it. Just tell the doctor. So he told the doctor that he's not feeling well, and the doctor sent him to the hospital to check his heart. And they keep him in the hospital to want to check the heart and then may have to do a bypass. Let's see how it goes.
oh,
But he's already
Cheryl,
70
hope to
plus.
hear that.
Sad to
I
hear
think
that. Hope.
it's okay. I told him not to worry, just yeah, be positive. Like what the
And
100
he's
year
in
old.
Singapore, right? He's
Yeah,
in
yeah, in
Singapore?
Singapore. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I have two brothers there, so
Good
it's fine.
hospitals. Good hospitals.
Yeah, I hope so. Everything should be fine.
Praying for him to get well, Cheryl.
Thank you. He'll be
Cheryl, the
okay.
story you told about the 100-year-old lady in Japan,
Yes.
very positivity was her.
Yes.
I've been telling that to lots of people. That's fun, and older people, and they really like that story. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing.
Yeah. Everyone should spread the positivity. Okay, top of the hour.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed of all the interviews of the longest living people when they do TV interviews with them. They're always laughing. I think that's a huge
That's
part of it.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, I saw also that was a TED talk. I can't recall the name, where they studied which are the most important factors for longevity. And I can remember because it struck me the number one was the social interactions, with friends and family and community. That was
Yeah,
the most important one.
yeah.
So they're
My
seeing like this
great
like
What
die
was
off
aunt,
with
really
things like 100 years from
I
now with
watched
all
that.
the COVID lockdowns is like, oh yeah, there that was from the 2 year period where no one basically
but
talked to
look,
each other.
my
But the
great aunt, she just turned 94 2 days ago, and she is so active on Facebook. I'm like, honestly, what are you doing?
but
So, and she knows how to use emojis, and yeah, I mean, she's social not only in real life, like face to face, but she's all over that Facebook.
and the other thing, Florent, the other thing was that in that TED talk was social interaction was one and two for people who you could call at any time of the night, middle or who will be there for you, those kind of thing, and talking to people, total strangers, talking to them. But
the,
what was really interesting was flu jab was above exercise. So those who are
Whoa.
over 50 should get their flu jab this
ah,
autumn.
I saw a headline that loneliness, like people who actually become kind of detached to the degree that they actually sense loneliness, feel loneliness, and that it's has they somebody tried to quantify it, an expert, and they said it's similar to packing a smoke of cigarettes per day, the kind of negative effects that can have on human health. And then
But
yeah, Florian.
yeah, Tyler. But in a sense, for me, that's the community you build here and the way on that platform, which is of course whatever. It's not even it started early this year. Um, is something amazing because I feel part of this community, of your community here, even though we have never met.
Yeah.
It's a different way of interacting, and I have similar feelings to my community here, which I can see offline, friends around me, because with this, the daily interactions, when people have time, people caring about each other, besides the news, and it's really great, and there's a news source, and I love to spend time here. But then there's the effect, and sometimes I have that feeling about being worried that this platform could no longer exist, or would
Mm.
run out of business, or Twitter is gets stronger, or whatever, because I find this a very special place
Yeah.
and very worthwhile spending time with all of you.
Yep.
Tyler, what Florian is saying that you need to organize a conference where we can all come to Thailand.
Sure.
Barbecue party at
Yep.
Coconut Beach.
Tyler,
Geek
check your
Beach.
DMs
I
because I
already
have this
responded to your DM.
strategy.
Check your
Did you?
DMs.
It's kind of brilliant, right?
Yeah, it is.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
look,
PTR to my great
check it
aunt's
out now
thing too.
because you might need to make plans sooner than later based on my response.
All right,
You
cool.
should
Okay.
all just come to Stockholm, where you already have your
I
event.
already do a very large event every year for around 10,000 people each year. There, as Sarah well knows, I've been doing it for many years, but not this year, unfortunately. Um,
This
although
is so sad.
I'm
We're
hoping,
really gonna miss it.
I know, I'm hoping to fly over there in the next few weeks and maybe try and do my monthly events, which are several hundred people, usually 500 people. So so I can do those.
Where do you do them?
In Stockholm at the Hilton Auditorium.
Cool.
They were awesome. Worth a Stockholm visit.
Yeah, sure. I think Sarah's been to over 8 years. We've done I think she's been to most of them.
Since Up 46 started.
Yeah.
I think that's how we met.
Yeah.
And just wanted to add, Florian, I agree with you so much. And I was going to say, even when one has met in real life, one really feels. And also wanted to add to that conversation that it's a very important factor to think about with people is to not be feel excluded. It's apparently one of the biggest. It sort of probably goes along with loneliness, but exclusion is even worse than loneliness. And another one I was just reading this morning was that the most underestimated one being sleep. So that gets back to dreamland.
Yep. I think your mic just...
And we're closing the loop here back to your dream, Tyler.
Yep. Aaron Smith, I just tried to... I see your hand raised and I accepted it, but I see you're still down in the audience, so you might have to pop out and back in. And
Ben is there too. I saw Ben.
And you mean in the audience or in the hand raise?
Yeah.
I see him in the... there he is. I got him.
The audience.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Vinay is here.
There's Vinay. Got him. Thank you. Okay. So the top story, shall we? And very happy Friday, as Lakeisha says, and as Cheryl tried to imply. It is September 17th. And the biggest story, here we go. It's back. The Wall Street Journal. This is the top story. I don't pick these. The Wall Street Journal, internal documents. Wow, yet again with the Wall Street Journal, with internal documents of an internal source of who's the trying to get. Well, let me click on the article and then look at the byline. Yes, Jeff Horowitz. This time with somebody named Justin Sheck and Newly Purnell. And the headline reads: Facebook employee. They have internal documents and they're going to continue to have internal documents and presentations and stuff because they have an internal source at Facebook who's, oh boy, is this internal source wreaking some serious havoc. And you know what? Let's just pause that thought right now, because that internal source, Facebook now understands they have an internal source who's providing this to Jeff Horowitz. It's not impossible to find that person if you are a clever cybersecurity expert. So that person is now being very much sought after by Facebook of who's providing these internal documents to Jeff Horowitz. Jeff Horowitz has an email address, or he put his phone number on his thing. If that person is obviously internal to Facebook, Facebook has some fantastic cybersecurity experts who could find out who that person is. So we might see a really interesting headline in the and these might stop very suddenly, and so keep that in mind as we read these. But this one is now number 5 in the series. They did 4 days in a row. They took a day off, and now they're back. Day number 5.
It makes you wonder if maybe somehow like someone just has a Dropbox access, or something.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not easy to do what this leaker is doing, because one of the two people is known, which is Jeff. So, very possible this person could get figured out.
I mean, whoever's on the Facebook team, is they're trying to hack his email. They've probably already gotten in, so they can monitor it.
Oh yeah,
that's why I'm saying it's probably a Dropbox or something like that.
Come on, Facebook has. They could buy Pegasus if they wanted to and hack Jeff's phone, and then they could see everything in his phone. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is what I'm saying. Like, Facebook. The headline today, number 5 in this. They call it they've branded this series now. They're calling it the Facebook Files. I guess it'll turn into a Netflix series. Facebook employees flag drug cartels and human traffickers. The company's response is weak, documents show. Employees raised alarms about how the site is used in developing countries where its user base is already huge and expanding. In January, a former cop turned Facebook investigator posted an all-staff memo on the company's internal message boards. It began, "Happy 2021 to everyone," and then proceeded to detail a new set of what he calls learnings. The best of these learnings: a Mexican drug cartel was using Facebook to recruit, train, and pay hitmen. The behavior was shocking and in clear violation of Facebook's rules, but the company didn't stop the cartel from posting on Facebook or Instagram, the company's photo sharing site. Scores of internal Facebook documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal show employees raising alarms about how its platforms are used in some developing countries where its user base is already huge and expanding. They also show the company's response, which in many instances is inadequate or nothing at all. Employees flagged that human traffickers in the Middle East used the site to lure women into abusive employment situations in which they were treated like slaves or forced to perform sex work. They warned that armed groups in Ethiopia used the site to incite violence against ethnic minorities. They sent alerts to the bosses on organ selling, pornography, and government action against political dissent, according to the documents. And in fact, we had one of the, I believe it was one of the very first headlines we ever had 6 months ago, was how ladies in Thailand were being recruited to go work in the UAE and other, Middle East, as quote unquote housekeepers or massage or whatever, and they arrive, and then their passports are held, as is strangely, disturbingly, rather common for foreign laborers in the UAE. And then once your passport's being held, I mean, the UAE has these really kind of odd rules about what your boss's powers over you, and their ability to hold your passport, and you have no recourse. I mean, you become a slave quite quickly with very little legal recourse. And anyway, so I remember that story very vividly because I'm living in Thailand. I understand how Thais are looking for work all over, Korea and everywhere. So and these are on Facebook, and I have seen these on Facebook where they're recruiting, come work in Korea, come work in, so anyway, the Facebook removes some pages, though many more operate openly, according to the documents. In some countries where Facebook operates, it has few or no people who speak the dialects needed to identify dangerous or criminal use of the platform, the documents show. When problems have surfaced publicly, Facebook has said it addressed them by taking down offending posts, but it hasn't fixed the system that allows offenders to repeat the bad behavior. Instead, priority is given to retaining users, helping business partners at times placating authoritarian governments whose support Facebook sometimes needs to operate within their borders, the documents show. And as we have said many, many times here on this stage, but Facebook's by no means alone in that. It's basically all the tech companies, especially if it's a large economy. When problems have surfaced publicly, Facebook says it addresses them by taking down offending posts, but it hasn't fixed the system that allows offenders to repeat the bad behavior. Facebook treats harm in developing countries as simply the cost of doing business there in those places. A former Facebook vice president who oversaw partnerships with internet providers in Africa and Asia before resigning at the end of last year, Facebook has focused its safety efforts on wealthier markets with powerful governments and media institutions, he said, even as it has turned to poorer countries for user growth. This is very rarely a significant concerted effort to invest in fixing those areas, he says. So that's the new heat from the Wall Street Journal, from Jeff. And there's a related article, believe it or not, that I just coincidentally happened to find in the tweets that people have tweeted in over the, since we met last. And I'm trying to remember who tweeted this one in. The Jeff G tweeted this one in, that some publication I have never heard of called Redfish says today Instagram took down our page with no justification. This is the second such ban this year following Facebook's removal of our page last April as part of a politically motivated clampdown. So Redfish, which again I have never heard of, they have 141,000. So I'm trying. Oh yeah, so they tweeted this themselves. Jeff in the audience retweeted it with our Tech News Around the World Twitter account, so I saw it. And then I go to Redfish's Twitter account because now I'm looking at their Twitter account. They say they're based in Berlin. I'm retweeting the tweet I just read right now so you can see this. And what's interesting is a few things. Number one, Twitter has labeled them in a way I've not really ever seen Twitter do. It says Russia state affiliated media, right, as part of their bio in a way that they didn't put. Twitter put it there. And it's on every single tweet that they do. Twitter includes right at the top of the tweet, Russia state affiliated media, even though they themselves say they're based in Berlin, Germany on their bio. That's interesting. Hold that thought. And then it says today that Instagram took down our account and that Facebook had taken down our account back in April. Now, and they're claiming we don't know why they took it down. Their last tweet, and people's tweets and Instagram posts when they're media companies like this tend to be somewhat synchronous, right? Like if you're the Huffington Post or BuzzFeed or whatever, generally, if you put out a tweet, you also put up an Instagram post at the same time, right? I mean, that's generally how it works with these outlets. So I looked at this Redfish's most recent tweets to see, did they do anything that what would cause Instagram to ban their account? And their most recent tweet is, today we remember the thousands of Palestinians and Lebanese who lost their lives during the Sabra and Shatila massacre 37 years ago after Israel's invasion of Lebanon. During 2 days of terror, thousands were raped, tortured, and murdered by right-wing militias. Well, I could see Instagram taking an issue with that and removing your account if they, disagree with the end, as it said in the article that we read from the Wall Street Journal. Israel may have a lot of sway with, and indeed Israel's very proactive in monitoring how things are discussed online. So is it possible that Instagram, and by the way, Palestine and Lebanon have no influence on what Instagram or Facebook do online for the most part. So, Lebanon can't even get clean water or fuel. I mean, the country is operating, like a post-apocalyptic, scenario at the moment, which is terribly regrettable. But to the point, they aren't in a position to have any kind of political influence over Facebook. And there's been historical reports of Israel's influence with regard to Facebook's moderation. So, is it possible that Redfish is a victim of that? Yeah, maybe. And I only bring that up because it mentioned it in the last article about how they placate to governments from time to time. Well, here's another related article, actually, to this point. Jeremy Taylor, who used to work for AP, he's based in China and Hong Kong. I've followed him on Twitter for a few years now. I ever since I started working in Hong Kong, and he used to cover Asian tech news in a really cool way. And anyway, so he's not able to do it as much. He's based in Hong Kong. He's not able to go into mainland China so much, but he still covers a lot of Hong Kong. And he tweeted out, and I will retweet it right now. This is super, super interesting. No, that's not the one I wanted to show. Yes, it is. Yes. Organizers of Hong Kong's annual Tiananmen candle lighting, which they do in Victoria Park in Hong Kong every year for 33 years or whatever it was, ever since the Tiananmen Square massacre happened. The Hong Kongers have been getting together en masse, and I mean, it feels like millions of people all packed shoulder to shoulder to do a candlelight vigil in Hong Kong, and they've been doing that for 33 years. And this year, it was the first year where it was really firmly squashed. 9 people today have been arrested and sentenced to long prison terms, even though nobody really participated in it. Somehow they found 9 people who they believe participated in it. Everyone was watching the live streams and was reporting and everything. So anyway, but what's interesting is Jeremy Taylor, who writes for AFP, he's a journalist there in the region. He says that the organizers of Hong Kong's annual Tiananmen Vigil said they had been ordered by Hong Kong and through the by the National Security Police to delete their online presence, quote unquote, as mainland style internet curbs become more commonplace in the city. So, and I predict this. I did predict this. This is Chinese mainland style internet curbs coming to Hong Kong. Do you see what this is leading to? Do you see how I've given you 4 dots previously in this evolving process that basically Hong Kong has been totally controlled on the ground geographically and with the people. The people are not allowed to protest or even hold up a white sheet of paper. Even that is considered a sign of protest. They're saying they've been silenced. We can't protest, so we hold up a white sheet of paper. You can't even do that. They've been effectively controlled just like mainland Chinese people on the ground. However, they have something that the mainland Chinese do not, which is the internet, the Western internet. And boy, is that a headache for China trying to control. So the organizers of the Tiananmen Square annual get-together is now being told they have to take down their website, which is on the Western internet. You see where this is going? So the question is, how long before the Hong Kong will have to use the Chinese internet, which China has more of there's a separate internet, essentially, the Great Firewall of China, and that they will need to surround Hong Kong with their internet. And that's going to be very interesting because as of yet, no other country or geography has been brought into, but China's going to have to do that if they want to control Hong Kong digitally the same way that they do physically, geographically, culturally, etc. Well, they want to control them culturally, so you have to control them digitally. I mean, it's just simple as that. So it's interesting to watch how that unfolds. Then, but back to the big headlines. The second biggest headline is from CNBC. That Adam Mosseri, the boss of Instagram, faces criticism after comparing social media to cars, saying, quote unquote, cars create more value than they destroy, even though people die in accidents. And making a comparison that Instagram generally is actually similar to cars. It provides a lot of incredible value, and people die, and but life goes on. And so CNBC says he's now facing criticism for his comments. Came under a flurry of criticism for comparing the value of social networks to society to that of cars. And Jeff Horowitz took to Twitter to say, and he's the one from the Wall Street Journal who has the source at Inside Facebook. And he basically just quotes him. He says, cars have positive, so it's just a quote. Peter Kafka, who I think he's still at Recode. For many years, he's been writing for Recode as a tech journalist. He did the same. He just quoted him basically. And trying to look for other names I recognize that have... Jason Goldman. I haven't seen him tweet in a while. Jason Goldman was one of the first 5 people at Twitter and kindly handed over the @Jason Twitter account to my friend Jason Calacanis. So Jason Goldman says the production and use of cars is one of the most highly regulated consumer goods on earth. Oh, what an interesting point with regard to social media. So that if he's comparing it to cars, you have to have a license and be over 18 to use a car, do you not, Adam? So that's a bit of a self-checkmate right there.
And manufacturing them, you actually have to take a lot of care to make sure, you minimize the chance someone dies. So, it's not really like a haphazard thing that, someone died today in a car. Every car death gets investigated.
Tyler,
yes.
Can you check the hand raise?
Sure.
I saw Ken Charles is in the room.
Yes, thank you. So, in general, though, I mean, Adam tried to make a decent point. I understand where he was coming from, but it's just a PR lesson to people in big companies. Is everything you say, every metaphor you use, is going to be scrutinized to the nth degree, and you gotta pre-plan that shit. And that's why they do generally pre-plan that stuff. You can't be shooting from the hip making metaphors like that. You can get yourself in some deep doo-doo, as Adam is now getting into, because metaphors are going to be scrutinized and they don't hold up, just precisely as Jason Goldman just showed why you don't do metaphors like that. So the next headline is from The Verge that Senators Markey and Representatives Castor and Trahan wrote to Facebook calling on it to abandon its plans to launch an Instagram app for kids in light of Wall Street Journal reports. So we'll see how they respond to all of this whole development of these headlines from the Wall Street Journal of these internal sources will obviously continue unless they figure out who's leaking it. And we have to imagine the cybersecurity team is at least making a cursory effort to figure out who that might be. The next one is from Mac Rumors about the initial benchmarks of the new iPhone 13's A15 chip, which offers roughly a 15% improvement for the graphic processing and a 10 to 18% improvement for the central processing unit, CPU. And that's why it wasn't revealed at the annual Apple event that we live streamed on Tuesday morning, US time, because Apple historically has always revealed that information themselves. This year they didn't, and now we know why they didn't, because it's not that impressive. And so that's why we had to wait for somebody else to come out with it. And we even said that while the live stream happened, right when it concluded. One of the first things somebody said, it might have been Evan, that, hey, did you notice they didn't reveal, the relative performance upgrade from last year, as they've always done? And yeah, we'll have to wait for a geek to do the benchmarks. And now somebody's done the benchmarks and they revealed the numbers, a 15% increase and a 10% increase. That's not the type of increase you're going to include in your keynote presentation. Now we know why they didn't. The next one from the Wall Street Journal, how law enforcement's ability to track people via commercially available data blurs the line between investigative due diligence and warrantless surveillance. Agencies' growing use of purchase data without warrants raises new legal questions. Yes, it does. Kind of does. Because the governments have figured out data, the government agencies, police departments, law enforcement have all figured out the power of data. And now even the people are understanding the power of their own data, and they understand that the governments understand the power of that data and how the governments are using data in ways that they previously weren't able to. And now we're all trying to debate endlessly what kind of controls and permissions, as we call it in data land, who should have what permissions. And that's kind of at the heart of Charles, the company Charles co-founded, which is the facial recognition system, is who has the permissions, and what is private and what is public, and societies are going to have to debate this, and they are debating this. In the U.S., they debate it in courtrooms, and in other countries, they don't. The government makes a decision, and that's the end of it. And so,
I mean, I've got to say, like, this debate would be a lot easier if we didn't have Facebook or Google anymore, right? Because we could actually like have a conversation about what is government use, what is corporate use. But a lot of the conversation gets kind of blurred because of the bad actors out there, like Facebook.
what is the tweet, the headline that you shared today, Charles? There was two of them.
Oh, the one I sent you is from the Houston Business Journal. It's about Authrum, which is a company I helped start, and it's about basically the headline is exclusive genomics company raises 18 million Series B to help solve cold cases, and it's the same investors as the people behind SpaceX. And let me read you Authrum, a company based in the Woodlands, is using genome sequencing technology to help law enforcement crack cold cases that were previously unsolvable. Those cases include the murder of Carla Walker in Fort Worth in 1974, the 1989 killing of 14-year-old Stephanie Isaacson in Las Vegas, and an unidentified body found in a septic tank in Alberta, Canada in 1977. With new financing, Othram aims to apply its DNA analysis tech to more unsolvable cases. And then I'll just sort of jump down a sec here. Yeah, so this past week, there's basically a trade show on genetics and on law enforcement generally. And this David, who's the CEO, David Middleman, announced 3 back-to-back solves on missing persons, sort of dead bodies. But the line that I thought was interesting, so this is from, it's led by Austin-based venture capital firm GigaFund. GigaFund has invested nearly $1 billion into Elon Musk's SpaceX. Oshkwi will join the board of directors. Anyway, this is the line that he had. Othram's technology has helped investigators close an impressive number of cold cases, and we believe this will one day become standard practice for law enforcement, Oshkwi said in a statement. David and the Othram team are making us all safer.
Okay.
So anyway, I think that this sort of technology solving the problem is going to be very interesting when it comes to, we have an increase in crime in major cities. And I think eventually, probably in my lifetime, certainly in my daughter's lifetime, that we will live in a world in which every crime can be solved if people want to actually solve it, because it's quite hard to murder somebody and not leave behind some DNA.
And Charles, this is Netta. So I'm assuming this is also going to be helpful for helping clearing people that might have been to exonerate people
Yeah,
from jail as well, right?
of course. Yes. I mean, my view, for what it's worth, is that we should sequence everyone, but we should especially sequence a lot of prisoners, because there's a lot of people who should be in jail that aren't, and there are some people though who are in jail that shouldn't be. And so I really don't understand, with like $100 is what it costs to do a full genome sequence. I really don't understand why everyone just doesn't sequence all the prisoners that were there, and then get the evidence that's there if there's DNA evidence. But that's sort of, you discover rather quickly that there's a whole lot of people that nobody really cares all that much about, and that's kind of pretty sad. But
I have someone I know, a friend of mine from the music business, a very big veteran in the business, and he's been very active in helping in cases like this and to exonerate the people. So um, I will see if I can maybe connect the both of you together for that.
So
But the point is, just quickly, Charles, you have to have a sequence beforehand in order to actually match it later on when the activity happened afterwards. So how would it solve that you would just go afterwards and then try to sort of get the sequencing done on the particular person which you haven't got the sample before?
so in this case, like the way Othram works is basically law enforcement comes to Othram and they say, hey, we have this missing, with this dead body that we don't know who this person is. They're a Jane Doe or a John Doe, and we don't know who they are. And sometimes sometimes Othram will crowdfund solving the cases, because sometimes the municipalities don't have the money, but they have like the dead body. And so what will happen is that body will be sequenced by Othram, using its own proprietary technology and its own. Think of it like a souped up 23andMe or a souped up Ancestry. And if you've done Ancestry or 23andMe, you can actually donate your DNA, because you might be on the critical path, particularly if you're like a rare ethnic group. But yeah, basically that's sort of how it works. I mean, it's not really all that complicated. It is complicated, but it's sort of deceptively simple insofar as it's basically extending the technology that was used to catch the Golden State Killer, and it's extending it to all these other domains as well. And I think this will basically become the standard, and it's starting to be the standard in state after state. If you're in Canada, those of you who are Canadian, it's actually like very forward there. Othram has become the genetics lab essentially of Canada, so there are all these cases that are being cleared out of there.
okay, so the article that brought up this topic, this Wall Street Journal, about the law enforcement's use of commercial data, that there's basically as this article says quite well here. It says few consumers realize how much information their phones, cars, and other connected devices broadcast to commercial brokers, private companies, and how widely it is used in finance, real estate planning, and advertising. While such data has been quietly used for years in intelligence, espionage, and military operations, its increasing use in criminal law raises a host of potential constitutional questions. Data brokers sprung up to help marketers and advertisers better communicate with consumers, but over the past few years, they have created products that cater to law enforcement, homeland security, and national security markets. Their troves of data on consumer addresses, purchases, online and offline behavior have increasingly been used to screen airline passengers, find and track criminal suspects, and enforce immigration and counterterrorism laws. The Department of Homeland Security has been using open source phone tracking tools for border security and immigration enforcement, while the IRS and the FBI have evaluated such data for other kinds of criminal law enforcement. The Wall Street Journal has previously reported law enforcement agencies at all levels have access to tools such as social media monitoring, commercial address histories, and troves of license plate data showing travel patterns. Privacy advocates on Capitol Hill have proposed a bill called the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act that will curtail warrantless searches by law enforcement, including by requiring government entities to secure a court order before buying U.S. cell phone locations and other commercially available data from data brokers. The proposed bill only applies to law enforcement, not volunteers or other nonprofit groups, which could still purchase open source intelligence leads and turn them over to police. So it will then change the wording of the law, boneheads. So it's a fair
That will
point.
never pass, by the way. It'll never pass.
I agree that it won't, but
I know Byron Tao, and who wrote the piece. Like, we're friends, and Byron is trying to write a book basically off of this material, and I think he kind of oversexes it. Like, we are constantly generating so much information about ourselves constantly when we walk around with, like, basically our cell phones. I mean, there's just so much information that you really couldn't, even if you wanted to make a law safeguarding the data, you really just couldn't do it. And what's more, like, the open source community, the open source, research community, I mean, they're essential to solving a lot of crimes and a lot of other sort of issues. I mean, we've all sort of seen the weaponized autism of the internet in full display. And so I just think this is really kind of like making a big fuss about something that I think most of us have kind of already reconciled ourselves to.
but yeah, and then why wouldn't, just to play devil's advocate for a second here, why wouldn't law enforcement use social media monitoring? I mean, at that point, they're not able to see things that people aren't putting publicly. If you put things privately, or uh, as many people do post privately, but if you're posting stuff publicly, aren't you aware that that could be used by law enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, I think he makes the case. There's this company Anomaly 6, which I was going to invest in. I don't think I ultimately invested, though. I'd have to double check. Um, but basically, what they do is they track everybody's cell phone data, and so it's been used to apprehend a bunch of illegal immigrants, particularly like cartel members in Texas and elsewhere. And so there are all these people who are in a tizzy about this because Anomaly 6 just buys all the cell phone data it can and then turns around and sells that data to law enforcement. And law enforcement uses it, it's packaged in a nice way. And then they go and they make the arrests or the deportations. And, usually kind of the only people who seem to care about this issue are sort of the activist community. And a lot of the times they are funded by the big tech companies. And they sort of do this because they want to basically have a monopoly on the data that people are generating. They don't want other sort of commercial providers to take this open source data and actually, or open source commercial data and actually build these other products. And that's the sort of like dirty little secret about the whole so-called debate here.
Well, I guess it's journalists also are very personally concerned about how data can be used because they have sources that they like to keep anonymous. And just as we were talking about, by the way, the Wall Street Journal itself has now an anonymous source inside of Facebook. This feed,
It actually has a bunch of them. It has a bunch of them now
right?
inside of Facebook, and I think that the issue
But
that most people
my
aren't
my point
really
is that
aware of, yeah,
the journalists are keen to write stories such as this to highlight, um, how governments are able to act, and not even governments, agencies, police departments, and whatnot, or anybody has access to data because journalist sources become compromised as a result of this data. As I pointed out, it's very likely that the source of the Wall Street Journal leaks that are happening in the past week is likely to be found out at some point due to the ubiquitous data, that these folks, these digital trails that people leave unknowingly.
yeah. I mean, my understanding
Tyler,
is that the people at Facebook who are participating in the Facebook stories, that most of them, in fact, I think all but one of them have already left Facebook. So this is sort of like already happened. It's kind of my understanding,
Uh-huh.
but anyway, yeah. Go ahead,
Very
LS.
likely.
I didn't mean to
LS?
cut you off.
yeah, I'm just thinking, and Charles, I agree with you. I just think it has to be a combination, and I backchanneled you, Charles, on something else, but I just think it has to be a combination of policy and tech, because I agree. I mean, from my perspective and inner city stuff, I think the police as well should have their DNA. I really believe that at a scene of a crime or whatever, because if everyone's sequenced, then you can really know who's doing what and why and who, what, where. So if
Yeah,
we
I mean,
get to a
I've
world,
made that exact argument, and
exact. Well, I didn't even know that. See, that's funny
I've
because
I've
you're okay.
publicly said on facial recognition that there's a lot of people who go and cause, like at Black Lives Matter, like we identified a number of professional instigators in the crowd who are like astroturf in order to cause chaos in the crowd at Black Lives Matter rallies. So I made the case that like whatever your views on social movements, like we should actually want to know who's in the social movement, just because we want to know who's like a legit protester and who's like a legit rioter, right? And to draw that distinction is important, because it gets to the question of whether or not the protests are actually legitimate, or whether or not they're being used for other purposes.
So, next article from MIT Review says they have an internal report that Eastern European troll farms reached 140 million US Facebook users per month before the 2020 election. 75% of the users didn't follow any of the pages. But let me unpack something for you culturally, if you're not familiar. When it says Eastern European troll farms, Facebook, this is MIT Review saying this. Facebook's head of security says this is Russia, who's using Eastern Europe, the Russian citizens often who have relocated to Eastern Bloc countries such as Belarus, most notably. By the way, my own development team for my startup is a bunch of Russian hackers based in Minsk, Belarus. So I know a thing or two about this, so personally. So
Yeah,
the
my understanding though, Tyler, is that from this particular group, most of them are in Moldova and in
there's a ton in
Transnistria.
Moldova.
Yeah, yeah.
But by the way, I was in Moldova, in Chisinau, standing at the government building when it was surrounded by. There's two government buildings next door to each other. The Parliament and then the kind of White House, their version of the White House, are next door to each other, right in the smack dab center of Chisinau. And there was a large protests set up. I arrived on a Friday evening, and the students had surrounded the Parliament, and there was another group completely surrounding the White House. And these were two totally separate groups. The students had all these their own tents that they brought from home. They were on cold pavement, and they were, entertaining themselves, drinking in front of their tents, and they'd built a little city. In front of their version of the White House was a very organized, everybody kind of in uniforms with all the same tents, all had nice thick cushions, insulated cushions under their tents. They had a kitchen built, bathrooms built, had a security force with walkie-talkies and everything. And I asked the students, what is this other group that has all of these resources that you don't have? They said, oh, those are the communists. I said, what? They said Russia pays for those protesters who are pro-communist to protect. They want to ensure that Moldova becomes back into the fold of the former USSR. And so there's an upcoming election, and whenever there's elections in these Eastern European countries, Russia wants to make them communist and bring them back into the fold. So just to give you I say that for the context that when it says that Eastern European troll farms meddling with the American 2020 election, I think you might know who's behind these large-scale election meddling troll farms coming out of quote-unquote Eastern Europe. So, yeah, the Kremlin is incredibly savvy and focused on elections and election meddling, precisely in Moldova, precisely in Belarus. And by the way, that's why there's massive protests still going on now, months after the Belarus election, because they're vote showing with their feet on the streets. There's no way Lukashenko could have won. We voted his ass out. How is it possible that he won this election? Nobody's voting for him. Well, because and how is it that Putin manages to stay in power in their Russian quote unquote elections, which they have another one coming up right now, which by the way, they're forcing the Facebook. There was a headline 2 days ago. They're penalizing Facebook for not removing content that promotes Putin's main political opponent, Navalny's app. Navalny's team is also trying to use social media to promote, the counterforce to Putin. And Navalny's team has an app, and they're using strategies and tactics to be very clever in how they organize on election day. Makes sense. Putin's telling Facebook, you cannot show that content. Take it down now. We don't want people figuring out how to coordinate and with Mr. Navalny and his app to win the election. Take it down. We don't want fair elections here in Russia. We don't have fair elections here in Russia. Haven't you figured this out? I've been in power a very long time. I have no plans of stepping down here. So, Putin is very focused on elections, including American elections. And so this MIT report that 140 million U.S. Facebook users per month were exposed to the Eastern European troll farms just in leading up to the 2020 election should be no surprise at all to anybody. Facebook has already previously said that Russia is doing this, that they have these trolls. This is old news, honestly. So I don't know what else to say. But Facebook itself has come out and said, yeah, we've tracked back all of these troll farms to Russia and China, and they get very the activity ramps up very specifically before elections. So yeah. Next one from Reuters. Facebook says it will use the same tactics it uses to remove bot networks, like the one we just mentioned in the last article from MIT Review, to target real user accounts engaging in tactics like mass reporting. And what this is about is because Facebook has gotten good at dealing with these bot networks, and the head of security comes out and says, hey, we just shut down another Russian bot network. Literally their words. Hey, we just found another 100,000 bot network from China. We found another 100,000 bot network from Russia. They've been playing whack-a-mole with this for over a decade. And they're getting good at it. They're figuring out how to stop these bot networks because they're created digitally, and so you can defeat them digitally. It just takes years to figure out how to do it. But now that they've figured it out, Russia and China are pivoting. And we've read this headline in the past weeks, where now actual humans with actual accounts, specifically, we read the story, was it Kenya, where Kenyans were being paid, real actual Twitter users who have actual real followers are being paid a substantial, what to a Kenyan is a substantial amount of money. Messi, was it Kenya? You remember the article from a couple days ago, where they can make $10 to $15 a day, $20 a day by sharing content from some unnamed political source. by the way, it's China. It's common sense. This does not take rocket science to figure out who's paying Kenyans to do this political instability in a regime that they are not so friendly with, and to replace them with one that they are, so they can get to work, doing the mineral extraction. So, Messi, do you happen to recall which African country it was? I recall it was Kenya. It's kind of a moot point, but now the new strategy.
Yeah, it is Kenya.
Okay,
Yes, it
so
was Kenya.
the Kenyans make, as the article said, $30-$40 a month. So when somebody with a Twitter following of any measure is able to make $10, $20, $30 a day, sure, you can use my Twitter account. What would you like me to say? I make a month's salary for a tweet. Sure, what would you like me to say? And people who have verified accounts, and they're willing to do that. So humans can be bought. And that becomes a whole new challenge for these social networks to deal with. And that's why this headline from Reuters says Facebook will use the same tactics that it used to remove the bot networks to target real user accounts. Because that's what these countries are now using, are real user accounts. They're not really focused on the bots anymore, because that doesn't work anymore like it used to. They now have to use real user accounts, and even pay people remotely who are, in countries, where they can kind of financially leverage and do this kind of stuff. So now they got to figure out how to play whack-a-mole with actual real user accounts, engaged in tactics like mass reporting. Boy, does that happen. And it's commonly mentioned here in Clubhouse rooms, no less, that people intentionally block lots of people and then jump up on stage, and that prohibits a bunch of people from getting into the room. So there's all kinds of funny tricks that these social media apps have to now deal with, like mass reporting, with trying to ban, intentionally trying to ban people. But they're going to figure that out too eventually and crack down on that. So the next one's from The Verge, that Nate Chastjian, OpenSea's head of product, who was accused this week of a form of NFT insider trading, appears to no longer be working for the company. He's accused of buying NFTs before they appeared on the trading platform's homepage. OpenSea head of product Nate Chastjian appears to be no longer working at the company, and that would make perfect sense, because they need to distance themselves from that bad actor with a quickness. So that's not much of a surprise, honestly. The next one's from Slate. Inside the ASN Identity subreddit, an unofficial hub of men's rights Asian subculture, which has gained notoriety by harassing Asian men. They become notorious for trying to harass Asian women. Asian women, harassing Asian women. They became notorious for trying to harass Asian women off the internet. The racial trauma of the past year has only emboldened them. So I imagine this subreddit will get shut down, penalized, something. Let's see. Men's rights Asians think this is their moment. They became notorious for trying to harass Asian women off the internet. The racial trauma in the past year has only emboldened them. And yeah, it says spend a little time on the Asian identity subreddit and you will quickly become immersed in the lingo of men's rights Asians. The posts are dotted with contemptuous mentions of WMAF, white male Asian female relationships, and a whole bunch of other lingo, pejorative terms, similar to social justice warrior for Asians, who ascribe to liberal feminist values. Those common colloquialisms, members of the group reject the men's rights Asians and MRA Asians labels and are commonly associated with the group. The likes of the terms racial epithet. So Reddit's got a bit of a housekeeping to do there. So the next one is from Financial Times. China is cracking down on pessimistic financial blogs and social media accounts, as well as fraudulent ones. Analysts worry independent voices will be silenced. China has launched a crackdown on financial blogs and social media, a move that risks exacerbating the difficulty of... Oh, Financial Times website took a doo-doo. Hold on.
how optimistic the CCP want them to be if they're banning and
Well, this is kind
constraining.
of X-Files music time, because the link to the article goes to a page that no longer exists.
Oopsie.
And the Chinese hackers have already taken your story down about China cracking down on pessimistic financial blogs. That's kind of spooky. But we heard this in a headline last week, that there's now a new rule that you cannot have fake news about financial news in China. And even some people, even a couple of days ago, we had a headline where somebody in China was reached out to. Why are you reading articles on the Financial Times?
You
That
can't even read articles from foreign websites, right? That was that article.
Right. Well, there was two separate headlines. One was about a week ago, where the CCP, as usual, very transparently says, we're cracking down on financial misinformation, with against the law to spread financial misinformation, negative financial misinformation about China. And this headline's nearly identical. And then there was an article 3 days ago that there was a Chinese app that they're essentially forcing everyone to install, which is now being revealed that people who have it installed are deleting it because they're reporting that they're being contacted by authorities asking them, why are you reading this Western media false narratives about, China's financial situation? And then they said, I think I know how you have access to my phone. I think it's this app that you forced me to install 3 days ago. I think I'm going to delete that app now. That's what we read that story in this room from a very it was like BBC, honestly, who wrote that story. So yeah, Financial Times headline that China is cracking down on pessimistic financial blogs. Well, China is economically melting down now, is the big story, with Evergrande's 300 billion collapse now underway, and the Tencent has lost similarly about 300 billion worth of value in the past 2 months. You're getting close to $1 trillion. Well, when you add all the tech companies and the real estate companies, they've lost over $1 trillion in value in the last month or so. And by the way, one of the next headlines coming up is to put it in some, let a journalist say it, here it is from CNN. The headline right now reads, China faces potential Lehman Brothers moment. Wall Street. The implosion of Lehman Brothers 13 years ago showed how the collapse of a single entity can send shockwaves around the world. And CNN's talking about Evergrande, China's biggest real estate company, is also collapsing. This is well reported. So China doesn't want people to know that that company is collapsing, and they don't want people to know that their economy is collapsing, because the way economies collapse is when people take their money out of the stock market in mass, and then everything collapses. And they don't want you to do that. They want to control the media to stop you from doing that. It's fake news. We're not collapsing. It's fake news. Why are you reading that Western media that's reporting that we're collapsing? And by the way, China yesterday officially declared George Soros as the son of the devil and an economic terrorist. Why would they do such a thing? Well, because China is very familiar with what George Soros did in Thailand to cause the Asian economic crisis a few decades ago, where Thailand got a little too fancy with its central banks, and the currency, the Thai baht, got a little bit out of whack. George Soros smells that shit like that's his cup of tea. And he steps in when your bank is playing funny games, and he bets against it and forces you to rectify the situation in a very painful way. So if you start building an economic house of cards, he will knock it out from underneath you, and you will fall on your head and break your skull. He's done that multiple times to multiple countries. That's his game. That's his jam. And he makes billions of dollars in doing it. And he loves finding those scenarios. And he sees one in China right now. And he said so. And he said BlackRock, who just invested $1 billion in China, he says, you're going to lose all that money publicly. He went on CNBC and said that 3 days ago. because China's going to collapse. So China yesterday says George Soros is, quote unquote, the son of the devil and an economic terrorist, because they know he's likely to throw, $1 trillion to bet against China's economy to exacerbate their collapse, because that's how he makes money. That's what he does. That's how he's made.
Met him. I've met him, and he's an investor in one of my companies. And I'll just say, like, in that dude in his 90s is a killer. I don't even want to think about what he was like when he was like in his 50s. I mean, just think about that. Like, a guy in his 90s is coming at you. Like, that's just, you don't want to be on the other side of that.
You gotta see his ranches over here in Thousand Oaks in the Hidden Valley. It's like a 50-acre sprawling ranch, and there's no one nearby, and
He picked
like
up a
these
friend
guys
of
are.
mine for a business, for a pitch meeting. He picked him up like 91 years old or however old he is in a Kia. I just love that. Like, there's like certain things in life where you're just like, damn, you know. Picked him up from the train station in a
That's why
Kia.
they're rich.
So the Financial Times headline: China's cracking down on pessimistic financial blogs and social media accounts because they're used to controlling the narrative in the media, and they think they can control a financial meltdown by stopping people from realizing they're having a financial meltdown. So good luck with that.
You might have noticed that story like a few days ago about how George Soros' foundation is getting redone and remade. I think it was in the New York Times a few days
The
ago.
Open Society Foundation.
Yeah, the Open Society Foundation's being like kind of redone. And if you Google George Soros CIA, there's some interesting stuff that will come up about Soros's relationships with that agency. And so if I were China and I got a 90-year-old, 90 plus year old guy who's like famous for breaking the pound sterling and famous for other sorts of financial, engineering, shall we say, that has the support of the CIA, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'd be kind of worried if I were China.
Indeed. Next one from Bloomberg. Digital identity management firm called ForgeRock closes up 46% in its New York Stock Exchange NYSE debut for a market cap of $2.9 billion after raising roughly $270 million in its IPO. Digital identity management booming 46% on its IPO. Politico says the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, American extremists used TikTok in the lead up to the January 6th riots to recruit new members and share tactical guidance, quote unquote, for terrorist and criminal activity. This is from Politico. Extremists, foreign and domestic, have used the video platform, Department of Homeland Security says. The app says it has absolutely no place for violence or hate. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Because one of the other tweets somebody sent in is, let me find it right here. The biggest trend in all of TikTok right now, and boy, is this being reported by in lots of small cities all over the U.S., exclusively the U.S., is called the school damage, the school bathroom damage challenge, and this is the biggest trend on TikTok. And students are competing to inflict the most damage in their high school bathrooms. And I think we mentioned this briefly yesterday, and boy, has it gone viral very quickly. And
This morning, I thought it was just like taking supplies and stuff. Now it's just trashing them.
you just, well, yeah, and students are getting arrested, and Google the words TikTok school bathroom challenge, and every city in America is reporting this today. So the question is, and as somebody else tweeted out in a separate tweet, it's also revealed today. Cheryl, you tweeted out yourself this one, that it's now been revealed that executives at TikTok influence the algorithms of what become viral. So, correct, Cheryl? You tweeted that, you found that one today.
Yes, I found, but I realized that I tagged the wrong article, so I deleted it. You want me to send you the original article?
Send me the article.
Okay.
TikTok's
I'm gonna
executives
beat Charles.
are
I'm gonna beat Charles
personally
to his own punch.
influencing the algorithms and what goes viral. And what's the biggest viral thing right now in America is every school in America is getting destroyed internally, specifically in their bathrooms, and the students are getting arrested. And there's amazing videos being shown now of principals doing their morning welcome to school, pledge of allegiance, daily updates, and they're going irate at these students. So they're removing the doors to the bathroom stalls and the bathrooms themselves as an only recourse that they have so that people don't feel they have the privacy to destroy these school bathrooms.
This
So,
could never happen in Japan. I mean, Cheryl and
well,
Tomoko from
well,
States
Lakeisha,
can
do
correct
we
me.
imagine for 1 second this could happen in China, where TikTok is from?
Never, never. The reason I say Japan is that I remember from years ago reading about how Japanese students were responsible for cleaning their classrooms, right? So there's
Correct.
a sense of ownership.
Correct.
And yeah, only in America.
So the point is that there's already debate around how much influence China has in weaponizing TikTok in America.
They're weaponizing it against us in the COVID misinformation.
Well,
They have access to our
in
children.
I said hold the thought, because in this headline that extremists use TikTok to promote January 6th riot on the Capitol, it's the headline from Politico.com says extremists, foreign and domestic, have used the video platform. DHS says who are these foreign terrorists that Department of Homeland Security? I understand the domestic ones with the Capitol riot. The app says it has absolutely no place for violence. Oh, really? Your number one viral thing, the biggest thing happening in TikTok, is destroying American school bathrooms today. And it's revealed, as Cheryl's going to have the receipts in a second, that it's now found that the executives have a hand in cherry picking what goes viral.
Maybe President Trump was right when he tried to ban TikTok. I'm just saying this on behalf of
Do
Charles
do
as
we
well.
think for 1 second that they're having their bathrooms destroyed at Chinese schools?
Not at all. And you know what, Tyler? I mean, I think what it's also doing is mimicking this kind of anarchist behavior, right? So, what happens to juniors and seniors who've experienced this? Let's just say the senior class, right? I mean, and so they're, it's practicing this culture of tearing things up. So, what's to keep it from, moving outside of the school walls? Because I mean, our behaviors kind of train us to become the people that we are, right? So I think it's much bigger than just, some kids wrecking their high school
It's
bathrooms.
it's
And
all
Lakeisha,
interlinked.
Well, what we discovered when we were dealing with the Black Lives Matter riots and also with the Proud Boy January 6 riots is that the Chinese were pumping a lot of money through crowd funds to the more like crazier elements in both of those movements.
Can you
So
send an article about that?
and
yeah,
and this is
I'll send you some stuff on that.
and
I
this is all. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is also tied into the Hong Kong protests, right? Because on the ground level from the Chinese side, they were saying it was the CIA and Soros leading it all. And for me as a layman, it didn't make sense because Trump was president. Trump wasn't exactly a Soros fan, but now, God, this is just a mess.
Anyway, so about this TikTok being used by extremists, foreign and domestic, the analysis shared with law enforcement agencies nationwide comes as federal authorities and lawmakers examine the role of social media companies like TikTok played in the Capitol riots, which left 5 people dead. The DHS, Department of Homeland Security, alert shows concern that TikTok, already under scrutiny for possibly sending people's data to China, accusations the company denies, has become a hotbed of extremist activity, and that law enforcement have to pay closer attention to the platform more associated with viral dance videos than far-right radicalism. The Transparency Watchdog Property of the People obtained a document through an open records request and shared it with Politico. The group has been conducting a wide-ranging Freedom of Information Act-based investigation looking into the Capitol 6 riots. In a response to Politico, TikTok said it is working to counter extremism. There's absolutely no place for violent extremism or hate speech on TikTok. until now, security agencies have paid more attention to the likes of Facebook and YouTube for their roles in the potential breeding grounds for hate speech and real world violence. But as young people turn away from their parents' social media networks to newer upstarts, these platforms like TikTok are emerging as a source of concern and potential radicalization. DHS said it issued an alert specifically about TikTok in part because of some Homeland Security stakeholders' limited awareness of its functionality. And it goes on and on.
Tyler, can I just make a quick
Yeah,
comment?
1 second. It says, Hughes said TikTok is very efficient in bringing extremist content to its users and that it is awash with videos promoting the QAnon conspiracy theory. Who is Hughes? He's the and then he says the TikTok algorithm is so good that before you know it, you're on a domestic violence extremism spiral. DHS report made a similar point. TikTok's application layout and algorithm can unintentionally aid individuals' efforts to promote violent extremism content. Unintentionally, of course, very unintentional. The algorithms are
Well, I mean,
super unintentional on TikTok.
they're able to take advantage of the cultural issues that that a country could have, like US right now. They're probably understanding and realizing that people are disconnected, or the children may not have the same kind of supervision as they did back in the day. I mean, I remember as a kid, I would go out with my neighbors and my friends, and if my mom wasn't around or if my family wasn't around, their parents would keep a check on me and make sure that I was doing the right thing. So the old, what is that? It takes a village.
Yep.
That mentality is no longer around, and they're taking advantage of that because they know the culture of these young American kids. And we're looking at what they're doing. I'm kind of thinking, well, what is happening that they're thinking that this is cool? Is it the idea of being famous? Is it the idea of trending for a minute and just and then later on, like, just going into obscurity? What is the reason that they're just trying? Because I mean, you know history always shows, when you're a kid, when you're teenagers, you're going to do stupid things, you're going to do dumb things. But the fact that they've gotten to this kind of level, you have to look at what's happening in a society, what is happening in the culture that is inviting these kind of things, and not only inviting it but promoting it and honoring them. So instead of looking down at it as a society, or as your groups or your friends looking down at you like, hey, you're doing that, you're a moron, you're an idiot for doing this. And not realizing or not understanding the value of something that you're growing up with, realizing that there's other people in the world that don't have running water. So the fact that you're going out there doing these things in the toilets, it just makes you realize how disconnected you are from what is happening around the world, how blessed you are to have what you have, and to acknowledge that, and to appreciate that. So that's a social cultural issues. And countries, like you're saying, that other countries can come in and take advantage of of uh, the issues, the problems that we face. So in this cases, we can't always depend on the country or the government to fix everything. I mean, this is people have to come together, and we have to go back a little bit to the basics of, it takes a village. It means caring more about what's going on in your surrounding, caring more about what's happening in your family, caring more what's about happening with your friends. A smile doesn't mean that they're not going through depression. Then later on, everyone's saying, I'm sorry, I wish I knew, when someone's committing suicide, these teenagers. I mean, it's a bigger social issue. It's a bigger problem. And, to look at why, to look at what's going on and to report on it is one thing, but it's like putting Band-Aid on cancer. You have to go look at what it is and start fixing it, because when you have a solid root in a society, it's going to be hard for anybody else from the outside to come in
Okay, so
to
check this
infiltrate
out.
that.
From
Okay,
political,
so I just want to be quick.
I'll be super quick as well. I'll hand it to you, LS. But here's the conclusion in this Politico.com article. And Politico is about as good as it gets, honestly, in reporting of stuff. So here's what it says. A top TikTok executive told British lawmakers last year that the app had previously censored content related to what she called the Uyghur situation in an effort to keep conflict off the platform. You can't post anything about Uyghurs on TikTok, right? However, the Chinese app struggles to tamp down on content boosting white supremacists and domestic terrorists. Compared with the Intercept reported last year that TikTok executives had told moderators to suppress posts created by users deemed too ugly, poor, or disabled for the platform. A TikTok spokesperson told The Intercept those rules are an early, blunt attempt to prevent bullying. And an MIT tech review recently detailed an episode in which TikTok produced product allowed content touting Nazism and anti-Semitism to be automatically removed. The MIT tech review recently detailed an episode in which a TikTok product allowed content touting Nazism and anti-Semitism, but automatically removed posts about supporting Black success. I guess it's all coincidences, guys. This is just, I mean, don't get crazy. This is just a whole bunch of interesting coincidences. They're doing the best they can. It's not easy being TikTok. These algorithms are hard to control, really hard to control. So, next up, LS, you were up next.
Hey, yeah, LS.
I was just going to just give a brief comment quickly, and I think just perspective. We're talking about the U.S. My son's in high school. So if you're a parent and he's a senior and you don't, if you have a son in high school in the U.S., you'll get it quickly. And, he's very well mannered. I'm there. His mom's there. 4.6. But yeah, regarding this bathroom thing, it's trending like TikTok. He's even telling me like, Dad, you need to grow a business. Just go on TikTok. I'm like, I can't do that. They will trend things, and it's I don't know what to describe it. I don't think because he's black or Ethiopian and African American. He's not trending for Trump or no Trump or white or black. He's trending to a cause or that I think the youth or Gen Z see that the world has problems and why aren't they solved? And they're just angry. And I think a lot has to do with vaccines and masks for them. And, you're getting vaccinated and everything. Because kids, when they're told something, they want it to be truth from their parents. Like if you say, do X, do Y, and as long as, your parents demonstrate it, they will do that. And so I just think we need to remember that broader perspective. But that there's three different data points. That doesn't mean that China or any other company isn't optimizing, if it bleeds, it leads or whatever. They're trying to create controversy because users, activity, advertisement, et cetera, et cetera. And then if they're a state-owned operator, they're just going to profit from this chaos. But the chaos shouldn't continue to exist given the technology we have. And there's a lot of teachers that are going cuckoo. I mean, cuckoo in September for, back and forth. It's not even a political leaning. They're just like, it's just crazy, Tyler. It's just crazy in the U.S. right now on all sectors, minorities, hood, well-educated, private school. I don't know what's going on. It's like a chaos. So that's all I want to add. And it's really sad for the kids because they're just mad. Like New York doesn't have Zoom lessons, so you have to go in public in Manhattan or in New York. But then if they close it down, you have to abide by it. But then you can be, behind on your schools. So then how do you go to college? Yada, yada. So I'm done there.
Okay.
This is really the point that Netta made today, and the point that Lakeisha made yesterday on this theme of it takes a village to raise a kid. I think is such a strong one. I think to me there's just a massive global epidemic of fatherlessness. Not just in the single parent families, but in those what you just referred to, LS, is the well-educated kind of middle class, i.e., the fathers are abdicating the role of like parenting, coaching their kids, and I look squarely in the mirror on that. But I just think it's a kind of, I think Netta, you mentioned it, like it's not up to the government to do it. It's up to us as parents and us as grandparents and us as friends. I think yeah, that's where we need to take the responsibility.
The problem, though, is today, if you tell somebody anything about parenting, be ready for a whole world of fury. And that's the problem. I live in it takes a village because I didn't grow up in the area that we currently live. So we have no family and we have 3 kids and we're in our early 40s. So we're literally going batshit crazy. And for a couple of years, I really leaned heavily on the community to help us raise these children, as a like daytime dad trying to juggle 2 kids. And I really am blessed in that we do have a community that helps us raise our kids. But I am in a very unique area. You know, it's a little bit more affluent. We're further out from Los Angeles, but still get to enjoy all the glory of Southern California. And this just breaks my heart because, you know, this is targeted at our children. You know, this is specifically targeting our youth. You know, when we talk negative about China, it's about trade, it's about their unfair practices, it's about something that we're not happy about. And we don't go attack their children. And so that this is where I just think that we've hit a level that this is unacceptable. I'm hopeful and optimistic that, you know, Reddit's gonna launch an attack at some point. You know, and they know exactly what to do to hurt certain people in China.
So here's a headline. The actual headline reads, TikTok challenge calls for vandalism in school bathrooms. Locally, school principals have been warning parents to keep an eye on their kids if they're using TikTok after students have been damaging and vandalizing bathroom equipment thanks to the new social media challenge from 12 hours ago. So I'm tweeting that one out now. And then it gets more interesting, believe it or not. Here, watch this. The next one is from Shirok from Sky News that TikTok investigated over alleged transfer of personal data to China and child safety. Let me open this one up here. TikTok investigated over alleged transfer of personal data to China and child safety. The video sharing app was described as a potential national security risk by White House officials during the Trump administration. And TikTok's being investigated for data sharing, which that the video sharing app was described as a potential national security risk by the White House during the Trump. Although in June, President Biden reversed his predecessor's plans to ban it from download in the U.S. And let me tweet that one out. And then the next one is from Bibi from South China Morning Post that Beijing sets up a website for the public to inform on gaming companies. Anyone with a Chinese ID and a mobile phone number can report gaming company irregularities to the regulator through the website. And you can now report on the companies if they're not following the new 3-hour per week rule, where they're only allowed to let gamers game Friday night, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday at the same time. And if the platforms aren't complying, now there's a new website where you can, anyone with a Chinese ID and mobile number can report gaming company irregularities to the regulator through the website. The website appears designed to support last month's new regulations from Beijing, which limit gaming time for under 18s to 1 hour per day on the weekends. So that's nice. And back to the big headlines at the moment. There's a bunch of fundraising announcements. A company called Glean, an enterprise search engine startup co-founded by Google and Facebook veterans, emerges from stealth with $55 million of funding. So there's a new search engine in town by former Google and Facebook veterans called Glean. And then London-based Tick, or TYK, Tyke or Tick, which offers open source tools for businesses to manage APIs, raises $35 million. And Rune Labs, whose software aggregates the myriad of brain data into an integrated environment, raises $22 million. Telegram has exploded as a hub for criminals to buy, sell, and share stolen data and hacking tools as the messaging app becomes an alternative to the dark web because it's got legit end-to-end security, as so we are told. Omaze, a charity fundraising platform which offers celebrity meet and greets and other experiences, raises $85 million. And researchers say they identified around 10,000 Telegram users claiming to sell fake vaccination cards, with sellers often asking for sensitive personal info. It's becoming, indeed, a bit of the dark web there. That's Watch out for that stuff. The next one, Whatnot, a live streaming service for buying and selling collectibles, raises $150 million at a $1.5 billion valuation. Its third fundraising round in 2021. I believe we covered this on their last fundraising round, like, I don't know, a month ago? because I remember saying this is a live streaming shopping platform, which I've been yelling for 6 months is coming. And here is this round of funding funded
What is
by
that, Tyler?
it's
What is that? Is that like the shopping network or something?
it's an app where you can live stream to sell or buy stuff. A live streaming shopping platform for collectors to buy and sell things like rare Pokemon cards and etc. has closed $150 million Series C, its third round of fundraising in 2021 alone. The round pins WhatsApp valuation at $1.5 billion, earning a spot on the ever-growing list of unicorns. The round was funded by return investors Andreessen Horowitz and Y Combinator's Continuity Fund. I have trouble with that word. Continuity Fund, along with one-time firm joining them, Capital G, which was known as Google Capital. They've also added a few well-known names, including Golden State Warriors, etc. We saw this headline around a month ago. I told you this shit was going to boom.
What, social commerce? There's nothing in that, Tyler.
I
No,
told
no,
you this was going to
no,
be.
no. That thing's over.
Oh, in
No.
June they raised 12. They raised money in June, and now here they are again in September, raising 150 million more. I told you, live streaming e-commerce, boom, boom, to the moon, boom. I told you.
Now
I
they can
told
also
you.
do that with instant delivery.
I told
Like
you.
we're talking.
I told you. I told you many
And
times.
Tyler,
Yes.
and just to check on the Glean, I could be mistaken. I think it's the same guys who you're paying for a subscription service, and when you do your search engine, you're actually not being fed ads. It's actually going back to the core of what Google was. So when you search for something, you actually found that in the index
Hmm.
versus all everything else, so that they can just do ad servers, and you have to pay for a subscription. So we are going to a world where you're going to pay for searching, and it's anonymous and you're private. They'll keep all your data protected if that's the same company out of Silicon. But that's why he founded it, if I'm correct. It was to bring the search back to its original core. And I still have problems with the founders, Larry and Sergey, of do no evil. So we still need to do that, and then let people be anonymous, or to a degree, and then find out what they're looking for without the ads and the keyword ads and everything else.
Okay. LOD Games, which makes cross-play games for PCs, mobile, and consoles, raises $32 million from Andreessen Horowitz. Fantasy sports startup Sleeper raises $40 million at a $400 million valuation by Andreessen Horowitz, and there was another Horowitz one. But anyway, those are the big boring headlines, and now we get into the really fun tweets. And Cheryl found the financial blogger crackdown leaves China investors scrambling for data. Websites and social media accounts are scrubbed, making it harder to assess the state of the Chinese economy. Yes, exactly. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. And they have a really juicy quote in this one. One China-based professional said that while, quote unquote, there is an enormous amount of fraudulent activity that takes place, the crackdown would probably extend to anyone who misinterprets economic data, quote unquote, which means basically disagreeing with Beijing's interpretation of the data. Those of us who try to be a bit more objective, I think we're all worried about what the implications are. It's just too early to say. The veteran Chinese analyst added, there was always headline risk with China, but there is a different degree of headline risk now. Any kind of op-ed or small piece of newspaper about a certain sector can move the market the next day in a way that just would not have happened in the past. A Western economist focused on China who also did not want to be named. I wonder why. What would he possibly be worried about? Noted that a number of data series had been discontinued, including statistics on social disturbances. There were also frequent and unexplained revisions of other data sets, while microdata for households and companies critical of economic research were also unavailable. So they're stopping the regular reports of statistics and things. So people can't do trend analysis because the trends are going in the wrong direction. Makes sense. Hide those trends. Those lines aren't moving in the right direction. Remove them. The risk stemming from a muddied Chinese economic landscape coincide with a desperate search by investors for scraps of information on the direction of Beijing's economic plans and regulations. Over recent months, this has wiped hundreds of billions of dollars off the market values of groups across e-commerce, ride-sharing, gaming, education, and entertainment, and sparked a flurry of philanthropy by company founders in a bid to appease Beijing. Yes, philanthropy. So the next tweet is from BB that from Reuters. They say they have an exclusive that Facebook targets harmful real networks using playbook against fakes. And this is a reinterpretation of the previous headline, where now they have to go after real human networks because China and Russia aren't using bot armies anymore because Facebook figured out how to defeat those. So now they have to use real accounts with real people. And that's why the headline says Facebook targets harmful real networks using playbook against fake networks. Facebook's taking a more aggressive approach to shut down coordinated groups of real user accounts engaging in certain harmful activities on its platform. So tweeting that one out. Okay, the next one, Guardian. From the UK, Facebook encryption could prevent detection of child abuse, the NCA says. Police claim plans for end-to-end encryption would stop officers accessing incisive intelligence. And this, here we go. We could have a wonderful little vote and debate here, could we not? Should Facebook be end-to-end encrypted like Telegram? As we just read a couple articles ago, Telegram's now become a cesspool of the dark web of scammy behaviors and selling of all kinds of illegal stuff. Or if Facebook becomes end-to-end encrypted, we can just imagine what might happen there. Or should Facebook not be end-to-end encrypted and police be able to do their policing clever investigations? As it says, police claim plans for end-to-end encryption would stop officers accessing incisive intelligence. So should Facebook become end-to-end encrypted or not? Let's go. Anyone want to flash their mics if
Is this global jeopardy, Tyler?
Kind of. It's a variation. And let's bring up Swebless and Maurer to chime in here. Should Facebook flash your mics if you think Facebook should become end-to-end encrypted? May and Maurer. Okay. And then flash your mics if you think they should not become end-to-end encrypted. Vinay and Dave. Okay. And feel free, and Sarah. Okay. I pass no judgment on this.
Tyler,
And for the record, I'm totally torn on this one. To be just, I can't flash my mics on either of those. And I think maybe the people who didn't flash their mics might feel this. Flash your mics if you're actually on the fence like I am about whether or not they should be end-to-end encrypted. Okay, so we've got a nice cross section of everybody.
It is a tough one, Tyler, because if you look at facial recognition and you look at gene sequencing, like the stuff that Charles is doing, like Clearview plus all of that Authrum stuff, like it's amazing to catch the bad guys. But then I'm also torn, like you are, of encrypted versus not. Anyway, my motivation is to catch the
Tyler,
bad
I don't
guys.
think they're going to have a choice. Like, I don't think law enforcement will let them do end-to-end encryption. So it's sort of a moot point anyway.
yeah, there's another reason it's a moot point, of course, which is that if your device is compromised, if the ends are compromised, like Pegasus or whatever else, I don't know the capabilities of that particular exploit, but if the ends are exploited, it doesn't really matter whether it's end-to-end encrypted. You still got access. So, and you only need access to one end of a conversation to see the conversation.
I think I mean my worry is we already have an open look at everything surveillance system. It's called China, and America's kind of like a big the other side, and if we go that direction, it's absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's the fear. I mean, yes, there's going to be bad things that happen in the world, but opening up access. I mean, when all this data is there, centrally located, or for pretty much everybody, that's a data pool to be accessed and
can be abused, is your point.
Yeah, but also remember, it also can protect
Right.
vulnerable
Right.
peoples as well.
So I think what it comes down to is it depends on if you have a benevolent or a malign power that has access to it. For example, Swedes would be more or less okay with the government seeing everything because the government kind of already sees everything, and the Swedes are good actors. They have a lot of faith in their government. The government's not going to jail them for anything they say or do or not. They have a very friendly, very healthy relationship and a lot of trust in their government, so they don't really have a problem with any of these issues. China, on the other hand, probably would prefer that they didn't, weren't getting free daily proctological exams. So it depends on what the government intends to do with the knowledge. Are they going to use it to protect its citizens or to harm its citizens? I think it really comes down to that. I think if you lived in a country where you had deep trust and respect for your government, you would probably be more okay. You would probably prefer the government have access to everything so that they could catch the bad people because you trust them to do that. If you live in a country where you don't trust the government, you probably don't want them to have access to that because you fear that they are going to misuse it against you. And then it's kind of as simple as that. Me being from America, I look at it through the American perspective, and it forces Americans to ask: Do we trust our government or not in this case? Because this in this case, it's an American company. And that's what
Yep.
makes it
Like,
complex because right now
But isn't
So
Americans
I,
have a torn relation, are very kind of torn on this issue of whether or not they're trusting their government.
yep.
Was
In
there's
it?
another.
Singapore, we'll rather have our government to take care of all our confidential information.
Right, Singapore would be all for it. This is kind of the point.
Yep.
And I think
Cambridge,
Tyler,
There's
what
another
Cambridge,
side. There's
Cambridge
another side to
Analytica,
it, of course.
just real quick, Cambridge Analytica and what they did, and how they did the very narrow uh, um, manipulation to get the um, election is a prime example of what happens. And then I think, I'm not a Democrat or Republican, but ultimately the power being there, you can have a benevolent government, but once you don't, and then things can spiral real quickly into an Orwellian style future. So the risk, I think, is very, very high to have that temptation available to power.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Maurer.
Ty-
LS.
Tyler, I was just going to add one thing we got to remember though: the end-to-end encryption on Facebook, which was the original point of the article, is if they go to Libra or cryptocurrency, you would need that. And I think that's what we're not seeing, collectively, and we should keep that in mind because you would need that to transfer what Facebook tried to do with their own cryptocurrency. And I think as this comes out with the stable coins with governments, that's probably where that's leading, in my opinion. That's all.
Well,
Michelle's
if
in
you,
the audience, Tyler? I don't know if
Okay,
you've.
perfect.
There's a couple of other just perspectives, LS, to that point about needing to be encrypted for currency transactions, not in that's in sharp contrast to Bitcoin, where all the data is public and open and none of it needs to be encrypted. The security is done elsewhere. So, and the other thing to say is that obviously the benevolence of the state's an important factor, but also the education of the individuals is important. I don't think the average person knows whether their communication is private or not. There are ways that we can communicate fundamentally privately. If I go to Tyler's Island and swap a hard drive full of truly random data with him and use that in the right way when I get home, there's no way fundamentally anybody can ever get access to that. But you have to take your own steps and understand what you're doing. And I think that it's a complete moot point because if your device is compromised, and you've got to presume it is, then it doesn't matter how encrypted the traffic is in flight. You just pick it up the other end.
Okay, so the
I
next,
mean,
yeah,
I was just going to say, Facebook, if you've seen lately all these articles coming out, you've seen the president of the United States said Facebook is killing people. I mean, they do not bet on Facebook. Like, it's just not a good bet at the moment that
oh,
we're
you mean
in.
in terms of what the government's going to do to police it?
Oh yeah, I mean, every single conversation I have with people in the Biden world is about how they can fuck Facebook.
Hmm.
And like, that's just like everybody talks about it. It's like an open secret. It's
Hmm.
like everybody at every different level of government. So then, like, I think they're probably going to get fucked. Like that just seems like a good bet, you know?
I see. So the next one is from CNN. France bans unvaccinated American travelers. France has become the latest European country and the most significant tourism destination to remove the United States from its safe travel list following EU recommendations in the wake of the U.S. COVID spike. A French government decree issued on Thursday bumped the U.S. and Israel from the country's green list down to the orange, effectively prohibiting non-essential travel to France for unvaccinated visitors. And a lot of
Tyler,
unvaccinated people in America are saying, "Where's France?" Yes.
and Tyler, also CNN reported that Italy is now enforcing that only vaccinate all its workers need to be vaccinated. So
Government
it's like
workers?
I think it says all workers. I just saw it earlier. I sent it to you on Twitter.
Okay. The next one I have is from Jeff in the audience from the Wall Street Journal, that the World Bank cancels flagship Doing Business report after investigation. Probe false leaders, including Kristalina Georgieva, now IMF managing director, who disagrees with findings. The World Bank canceled a prominent report rating the business environment of the world's countries after an investigation concluded that senior bank management pressured staff to alter data affecting the ranking of China and other nations. The leaders implicated include the World Bank chief executive Kristalina Georgieva, now managing director of the IMF, and the World Bank president Jim Young Kim. The episode is a reputational hit for Miss Georgieva, who disagreed with the investigators' conclusions. A leader of the IMF, the lender of last resort to struggling countries around the world, she is in part responsible for managing political pressure from nations seeking to advance their own interests. It was also the latest example of Chinese government seeking myriad ways to burnish its global standard. In the Doing Business report, has been the subject of an external probe into the integrity of the report's data. On Thursday, the bank released the results of that investigation, which concluded that senior bank leaders of the World Bank, including Ms. Georgieva, were involved in pressuring economists to improve China's 2018 ranking. At the time, she and others were attempting to persuade China to support a boost in the bank's funding. The Chinese embassy in Washington didn't respond to requests for comment. Mr. Kim didn't respond to an email seeking comment. Ms. Georgieva says, I disagree fundamentally with the findings and interpretations of the investigation of data irregularities as it relates to my role in the world. Yeah, I imagine you would disagree. It found you guilty of being a Chinese puppet, so I guess you would disagree with it.
Classic example of like a big title, World Bank or World Health Organization. Don't be misled by that as a credibility marker.
So that's Wall Street Journal. World Bank cancels its flagship Doing Business report after investigation that finds that the IMF managing director is a puppet of the Chinese state. Wow. So Dave's right. Similar points being made about the World Health Organization as well. And
but Tyler, just for clarification quickly, the World Bank is U.S. backed. Let's be clear.
No.
The IMF, and I agree, I mean, they can be, in the WHO can be puppets of internationalism. And that's intriguing because these person at the World Bank, they're supposed to be more Western focused. And maybe they were, whatever, on the take, or just bullying China with their ghost cities and making their economy better when it shouldn't have been from an economic standpoint, which is my forte outside of AI. And so everyone knows that those numbers don't make sense. But I'm just wondering why the World Bank was slapped down, which is intriguing versus the IMF. And that's a whole different story. That's all.
It says Chinese officials in 2017 and 2018 were eager to see their rankings improve, and so Mr. Kim and Ms. Georgieva and their staff held a series of meetings to discuss ways that the report's methodology could be altered to improve China's rankings, according to the investigative report. The World Bank was in the middle of a difficult international negotiations to receive a $13 billion capital increase Despite being the world's second largest economy, China is number 3 shareholder at the World Bank, following the US and Japan, and Beijing was eager to see its power increase as part of a deal for more funding. It's a mutual back scratching scheme. So
yeah, and this is also important, Tyler, when we read charts, right? Ben, do you remember that one that we read on the quantitative easing going in, published by I think the Bank of England?
Bank
But
of
you just
England, yeah.
you look at the y-axis and look at the x-axis. It's just a joke. Like the methodology can be tweaked massively. So, like buyer beware when you buy a chart and consume it.
So an unidentified
That
an unidentified mismanaging the bank's really. In October 2017, Miss Georgina convened a meeting of the World Bank's country director for China. So they had a meeting, as well as the staff economists that compile the Doing Business report. She criticized mismanaging the bank's relationship with China and failing to appreciate the importance of doing business report in the country, according to investigative report. An unidentified lead staffer working on the Doing Business report suggested they could raise China's ratings by dropping data from either Beijing or Shanghai, since China's ranking combined data from both cities. Mr. Gina asked for a simulation of that strategy. Oh, wow. The staff later determined the change wouldn't have had the desired effect, investigators said. Other countries' ratings would benefit as well, reducing the improvement in China's rating. So, interesting.
Controversially, now the BBC and you put on subtitles and they read out the COVID deaths. Look at what the chart says in the sub box that says died for any reason within the last 28 days. But when the newscaster reads it, he leaves out any reason when he reads it. I'll just leave that there.
So Tesla to work with global regulators to ensure data security, according to Reuters. Executive vehicle maker Tesla will work with the global regulators to ensure data security, Chief Executive Elon Musk told the World New Energy Vehicle Congress. Sharok sends in this one from Wired UK. Speedy grocery delivery firms are racing to survive. The likes of Getter, Gorillas, Wheezy, and Zap are taking over our city streets, but on-demand grocery apps are really racing to be... But on-demand grocery apps are really racing to be too big to fail. The next one from Maurice Pinzon, who joins us from the audience, found this one that it's an update from the Wall Street Journal article. Facebook knew human traffickers used its site to sell people. It took limited action against them until Apple threatened to remove Facebook and Instagram from its app stores, according to Jeff Horowitz of the Wall Street Journal. And Ken just sent in the same one. Facebook employees flag drug cartels and human traffickers. Human traffickers and drug cartel prostitution rings have used Facebook for recruitment. The platform employees have flagged the problems to little avail, internal documents show. RCC sends in this one from the Wall Street Journal that adults are throwing tantrums in restaurants, planes, and at home. And if it seems like more people have a short fuse lately, just ask the restaurant servers, on airline workers, and customer service trackers who say they've seen an explosion in meltdowns, in a wave of meltdowns from the
Have
Wall
you
Street
guys
Journal.
The hell?
have you guys tried to book, like, talk to any airlines? I mean, I was trying to like get a flight adjusted here. It took an hour and a half to get United on the line. I think that's by the time you get to the service and the airlines, it's the service professionals has the amount that they have, or maybe the load. I don't know. It just 2 times took an hour and a half.
That hour and a half, though, Mar. I mean, we've talked about it on this article, right, Tyler? I think we heard like a 9-hour wait time at one point.
That's why we need those bots out there, conversational bots.
Well,
No, but
crazy.
honestly, hour and a half sucked. But recently we were hearing the wait times were like 9 hours. Like, like who the hell can do that?
The first paragraph says in line recently at the Winn-Dixie supermarket in Florida, John DiDonna worried that a nearby shopper was standing too close for COVID-era comfort. Mr. DiDonna asked him to take a step back. The shopper, he says, stepped even closer. Mr. Didana says, he snapped, "Do you love me that much?" He barked. The other person argued back. Mr. Didana retorted with a sprinkling of four-letter words, he says. The theater producer in Seminole County, Florida, says he has a shorter fuse these days after 18 long months of the pandemic, grappling with decisions about masks during rehearsals, employee vaccinations, and whether and how to continue performances. It's the navigating that's exhausting, he says.
And I think, Tyler, your point earlier is just sad that this correlates to the kids in the bathroom issue. And it can be exploited because the parents tell the kids all their frustrations and the kids start lashing out. So, it does take a village, and maybe we can help mitigate this because it is really sad what I'm seeing as this frustration just continues to grow.
Okay. So the next.
Tyler, I found the article finally.
Okay.
I DM you how TikTok controls what goes viral.
And let me check my DMs here. I don't see it yet. So the next one's from RCC, from CNBC, that artificial intelligence takes over the real estate industry. CNBC's Diana Olick reports on the impact AI is having on the real estate industry. Not a surprise, but it's a video in this case. So you'll have to check the link we just shared at the Tech News Twitter account. And here's Cheryl's link about how TikTok chooses which songs go viral. TikTok executives help determine which videos go viral, which clips appear on the pages of personalized recommendations, and which trends spill out from the app to the rest of the world. Oh, I see. So I guess there's no place for violence and the destruction of the school bathrooms across America today. That's just a wild.
That's not configuration, Tyler. That's just a complete accident.
That's just a
I
total
just
accident.
wanted, like, I thought that was kind of what's the English word? Självklarhet. I mean, everyone knows that the social media is kind of choose what it is going to be trending, right?
Goes without saying.
But
I was just translating.
Try and put anything about Uyghurs on there and see if it goes viral. So this is from Bloomberg. And what is the date? So this was in the end of April. The one that Cheryl sent about TikTok has a very direct hand in what goes viral. Obviously, they do. All Chinese apps know goddamn well they have to have a very firm grip on everything that happens in their apps. So the next one is from RCC, from nationalinterest.org. The U.S. Navy stealth fighters can refuel from drones. Though the Navy unmanned pairing programs are still in their infancy, the United States is on the cusp of arguably one of the most significant developments where fighter planes can be refueled through a drone, which is really cool. The next one is from Cheryl from the BBC. California fires, blankets wrapped around the world's biggest trees to save the big redwoods in California.
Oh, Tyler, you've got affection for this one, right? The trees, huh?
Yeah, indeed I do. But and these are very special trees indeed. These are amongst the biggest trees in the world, actually. And if you're not from California and you ever do visit California, of course you're going to want to go to LA and San Francisco or whatnot. And the drive, as every Swede knows, you drive the highway, the coast highway from LA to San Francisco. It's quite majestic, as you saw in the Apple live stream videos just a couple days ago. But if you do have an extra day or two to go into Redwood National Park and Sequoia National Park and see these trees, it will blow your goddamn mind. You cannot begin to imagine how majestic these trees are.
You drive through trees, like there's trees.
There's a tunnel in the tree. Yeah,
a tunnel through.
How old would they be? Like the oldest one there, Tyler? We're talking like hundreds of years, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're taller.
Gorgeous.
They're taller than the buildings in Manhattan. You know what I mean? I mean, these things
Like
are just
400 or 500 feet, right?
Yeah,
And even more of that on the university campus of Stanford. So if you ever get up north, yeah, the motto is "Fear the Tree" or the underlining motto of Stanford. So yeah, it's
So protecting
And
them
that,
from fires is a kind of a big deal. That would be more than any residential area. I mean, as crazy as this sounds, if we had to decide between San Francisco or Sequoia National Park, I imagine if we had limited resources, we would protect Sequoia National Park because you could rebuild San Francisco.
I agree.
So, the next one,
Like those trees aren't anywhere else on the planet, right?
yeah, they're, as far as I understand. The next one is from the New York Times, from Poppy, that the battle for digital privacy is reshaping the internet. As Apple and Google enact privacy changes, businesses are grappling with the fallout. Madison Avenue's fighting back, and Facebook has cried foul. What's this all about? The battle for it says Apple introduced a pop-up window. Oh, it's about how Apple's blocking Facebook and Google. So Apple introduced a pop-up window for iPhones in April that asked people for their permission to be tracked by different apps. Google recently outlined plans to disable tracking technology in its Chrome web browser, and Facebook said last month that hundreds of its engineers were working on a new method of showing ads without relying on their people's personal data, aka the data they were getting from Apple and Google. And so Apple and Google are in a battle against other folks who are using the data from their devices. We've covered this many times here. And Facebook, more than anyone, benefits from the data that comes from those devices. And so I'm just tweeted that New York Times article out for you to enjoy. And SpaceX update on their Inspiration 4 crew, who, after a successful launch on Wednesday, the first space crew with no professional astronauts aboard, is now circling the goddamn Earth. This is unbelievable. Untrained people, civilians, in orbit around Earth, in the most subtle but impressive fu to Jeff Bezos
It's
and
beautiful.
Richard Branson.
200 million dollars for St. Jude. Cancer patient, cancer survivor as one of the civilians going up there. Actually going into
Orbit,
space,
true
out of
orbit.
the orbit,
They're
not about
circling.
ego.
Yeah, they're not. They didn't go up for 5 minutes and come near orbit and come down.
And
They're
this isn't
floating in
about
orbit,
ego.
circling the planet.
This
yeah,
is for
that's a really
humanity.
big deal. That's a real. That's like that's almost like going on to the moon, man, and putting a foot down. Like that's the start of the space tourism or industry. You know.
Yeah. And then BB sends in this one from Yahoo Finance. China's nightmare Evergrande scenario is an uncontrolled crash. Well, this is, hey, Yahoo Finance, be careful. That is not allowed. That narrative is not allowed. That you're going to get yourself banned from China with headlines like that.
You might get hacked, Yahoo.
Protests intensify at China Evergrande Group's office. I'm sure you cannot mention that. That you do not mention there are protests intensifying at China Evergrande Group's offices across the country as the developer falls further behind on promises to more than 70,000 investors. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to mention this, Yahoo. Try to do better. The next one from The Economist, from Poppy, the beguiling promise of decentralized finance. And it's just a deep dive article on the Alice in Wonderland like rabbit hole of DeFi. And they even use
Yeah,
Alice in Wonderland is the image of the article of the rabbit looking down the rabbit hole with coins jumping into the rabbit hole. It's kind of funny. And then the next one from The Times says, is the West entering a Cold War with China? The announcement of AU, UK, US, which is Australia, UK, US, the enhanced trilateral security partnership between Australia, Britain, and the United States may come to look in future years like a pivotal moment, which was just announced publicly like yesterday. That the
Charles was talking about that kind of eyes, the five eyes type thing the other day, right? And
yeah,
reducing it
they're
down to a
calling
few.
it the new three eyes, yeah, because the five eyes is becoming eight eyes because they're adding in Korea and a whole bunch of other countries, and so now but this is different. Five eyes is purely intelligence. think of it as purely data. It's the intelligence agencies, like in the US, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, in the UK, MI5, MI6, and then whatever Australia's is called. And they're sharing information together. This is, our militaries are unified. You need a submarine? Here you go. We need a cruiser? Okay. We're essentially unifying our militaries to have a stronger global presence. And it
It's
says,
all going to go down under the single all-seeing eye. See the dollar for reference, Tyler.
when countries such as Britain it says the announcement of when countries such as Britain and the United States send their natives out into East Asia, they always speak of their desire to promote freedom and stability rather than to contain China. Now, though, tensions and unease about the West's future relationship with China has taken dramatic concrete form. Supplying Australia with nuclear submarines is a bold move that heralds a new era of tension. Tensions and unease about the West's future relationship with China has taken dramatically. Australia ranked 59th besides. Okay.
And France was excluded from this, Tyler. Just
Yeah.
so you know. So
Yes.
some NATO airlines are not. NATO allies are not involved.
Correct.
And so I think we're shifting to the east.
Yeah. So the next one is the UK's future forced to lean heavily into robotics, AI, and hybrid power. The new program called Mercury, run by the British Army, will help shape the force for battlegrounds beyond 2035, focusing on heavily into robotics, AIs, and hybrid power. Okay. And a robotic arm prototype can think and move itself. Electrical and mechanical engineer James Brutton uses machine learning to control a prosthetic arm from his mind, basically. But this whole robotic arm becoming intelligent is actually plays into the automation scenario of robot baristas and robot hamburger flippers and robot ice cream scoopers and robot kiosks of everything that can't be turned into e-commerce, because you can't really do ice cream through e-commerce, or you can, but it's a little tricky. So in those cases of those jobs that need, kind of humans, the robotic arm thing is going to get very interesting, because already the fast food restaurants in Scandinavia, all the ordering is done by touchscreens. So there's no more cashiers who interface with the humans. It's just the kitchen staff. But even the kitchen staff now, we've read reports, are being replaced by robots as well. So you're very likely, we're very close to having a fully autonomous brand name fast food restaurant like McDonald's or Burger King or what have you. So,
hey Tyler.
Yes.
When you were living in Tokyo,
Yeah.
all the ramen yasan,
Yes.
all the kare house,
I know.
all Ajido Hanbai,
Sushi, all of it. Yes. Japanese restaurants have been
all
automated since the 80s. I know. Japan's having a nice little laugh about this. But the Western, restaurants. So, yeah.
Shokuken.
Yes. Kaiten sushi. No? So the next one is GSK, GlaxoSmithKline teams with King's College in the UK to use AI to fight cancer. Artificial intelligence will be used to develop personalized treatments while investigating the role of genetics. Joe Williams sends in this one that Hyundai Motors will debut face recognition feature to enable drivers to lock and unlock the vehicle and sync their driver profile, their seat positioning, the steering wheel, and the heads-up display, side mirrors, and etc. will tailor themselves and remember your settings as you approach the vehicle and exit the vehicle. Quite a genius use case of facial recognition. And two more here. Banks from Reuters. Cheryl sends this one in from Reuters. The headline reads, "Banks beware, outsiders are cracking the code for finance. Embedded finance instruments like buy now, pay later jump in 2021 data shows. Buy now, pay later deals take center stage. Fintech market valuations leapfrog banks." And it says every app on the internet is now tapping into fintech startups to enable all of their finances. So hence the headline, Beware Banks. Outsiders are cracking the code for finance, which is exactly true. The internet of finance doesn't really involve the banks. It involves the startups like Stripe and Shopify and every fintech, Klarna, etc. All the buy now, pay laters. That's why you're fucked, banks, because every young user is no longer doesn't understand the need to get a bank account at Wells Fargo. They've got these wallets from Square and from everybody, and so your days are numbered. The next,
You mean me going overdrawn by $2 and it costing me $50 is
yeah.
not
Oh my,
a
don't
fair
get me started with that
proposition?
nonsense. Yeah. Last but not least, leaving on a really interesting positive note, LeBron James Spring Hill partners with Clubhouse for an audio series from the Hollywood Reporter. LeBron James and Maverick Carter partner with Clubhouse for rooms beginning this Thursday. I guess they mean next Thursday. That touch on issues related to sports and entertainment. So well done to Clubhouse in a deal
Nice.
with LeBron James and
Well done.
Maverick Carter's. Yeah, very well done. Cool. So that's it for now. At the top of the hour, our friend Florian's opening his room. So we're going to join over there. I think it's called the Tech Inclusion Room. Or
I
Yeah.
think it's scheduled 1 hour later though.
I know,
Let's
but
see.
he and I DM'd each other.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So he's gonna open it. Okay, great.
Yeah. Or
Hold
Messi
on then.
can
Let me
open it.
Is
check.
it now or later,
Yeah,
guys?
Now.
Okay. And I love that LeBron James, and Tyler, you predicted this though, so they need to give you credit. I'll
Yeah.
check into that. No celebrities coming into Clubhouse and just speaking your word, and I'll back channel and try to reach out. I know a few people that
I'm
know
sure it
him.
was a lot of. There's a
I'm
lot of
like 3 degrees away from him. But
competition to get
well, no,
deals like
but
this done.
but they should speak about their story because LeBron is very, I follow. He's very focused on building. He's one
Yeah.
person that I really respect because
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't fall to the excuse my language, for the fucking hype or the money. Him and Shaq, they just do what they do, and they inspire me to just do what you do, no matter what, and they're going to do it. And so I
Yeah.
think Clubhouse should go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
Lakeisha.
so go ahead, Ellis. I thought you
No,
were
no,
next.
Lakeisha, go ahead. You're
No,
excited.
I
Go.
thought you
No,
were
I'm
going to
just saying I
say.
agree because you know what? People need this. We need this. We need to be inspired more instead of this negative ass news.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and Clubhouse is just